Hey, how's it going, everybody? This is Jay with Kinetic, and today I wanted to kind of demystify how to pair a Tio to the TF1 because it's not as straightforward as a lot of people think, and there's a lot of pitfalls that you could be falling into. I actually get a lot of calls, hey, we're out in the field, this isn't pairing, or I'm seeing some lights, or I don't have head amp control. Lots of different symptoms that are really easy to solve. I think maybe Yamaha over-engineered this process and it could have been a lot simple for the user base that it's targeted towards. But we're gonna dive into that today. And we're gonna start with simply connecting these two, Tio to a TF1, and the various ways to do that. So we're going to start with what is called quick config. If you look at the front of the Tio, there are 3 unit ID numbers, 1, 2, and 3. Yamaha devices need to see a unit ID number in order to recognize it as a device and then give you the control at the console for that device. Now, unlike the other Rios, this one has that quick config switch. And quick config needs to be turned on at the Tio, and it also needs to be turned on at the TF1. Now, what is quick config actually doing? Well, upon recognizing that as a device, what the TF1 and the Tio will do together is patch themselves. It'll patch the first 16 inputs on the Tio to the first 16 inputs on the console, and auxes 1 through 6 will be outputs 1 through 6, and your stereo bus will be 7 and 8 left and right respectively. The reason for that is because on the TF1 there's no Dante menu. There's no way for me to go in on the console and set the secondary port function. So on most Dante cards you get a primary port and a secondary port. By default, the primary port is the primary port and the secondary port is daisy chain, so you can link that out to other devices. They also call that switch mode, where it just operates as a 2-port switch. But if you want to be really pro, you should probably set that to redundant mode so that you are running 2 concurrent networks in different subnets. So if one goes down, your show doesn't go down, meaning somebody kicks out a piece of Cat 5, your show's still running. It's really simple to do. I'll also cover that today. We're going to start with simple daisy chain mode and quick config, and I'm going to show you guys how to do that. That's the simplest way to connect these devices, and let's jump right in. So here I'm only using 1 Tio. If you're using multiple Tios, the TF consoles can support up to 3. So we're going to start with this in 1, and quick config mode is on here, and if you notice it's off, because that digital handshake needs to happen on boot up. On the TF1, I'm using a mouse. I highly recommend you guys keep a mouse with it. It makes navigating this thing much easier. The gear cog and the slot setup, right here is where the Tios are gonna land. I've selected Tio number 1 because the ID numbers are gonna be 1, 2, and 3 respectively. Because I set the Tio to unit ID number 1, I have Tio number 1 selected. This is the button for quick config. So we're gonna make sure quick config is selected here and quick config is selected on the Tio. And now, as far as connecting these 2 objects, I have a switch in place and we'll get into that later. But again, I wanted to show you guys the simplest possible way to do this. And that is off the primary port on this Dante card to the primary port on the Tio. Quick config is set up on both of them. I made sure quick config is here, and now I'm going to power up the Tio. And what should happen, what quick config should do, is assign my first 16 channels right here for me. Auxes 1 through 6 should be outputs 1 through 6, and again, the stereo bus should be right there. Now, if these lights are blinking, input and output, that means that that digital handshake hasn't happened yet. So we're going to power cycle if it hasn't. But if you look up, it's now connected. So that handshake happened and quick config did its job. 1 through 16 is here, auxes 1 through 6 are there, and the stereo bus is there, and you're up and running. Now, the last thing you need to do is patch that to the channel. So I have told the TF1, what the TO is going to be used for, but I still need to patch that to the channels. So if you want to jump over here, right here is our patch menu for the channel, if you can see that. And if I go into here, by default, it has the inputs. Now, input 1 is the physical input on the back of the desk. I'm going to change that to slot 1. Now, this slot 1 is going to correlate to input 1 on the TO. And we can check that just using a 58. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm seeing signal right here. That means everything's connecting the way it should. And if I select the physical input on the back of the TF1, this should go away because I'm no longer connected to the TO. Another good way to check this is with the phantom power light. So I'm going to select that. And this is a dynamic mic, so let's unplug that. And now I'm going to send phantom power. It's on there, and the light should appear. And if you keep the camera there, the light should turn off, turn on, turn off. So I know I've just connected the TO to the TF1 in quick config mode, and everything just works. So again, there's no way to set the secondary port on here or do any Dante patching on here. So that's why they have quick config on the console, because the menu doesn't exist to do that, and it'll do that for you. I'm going to show you in Dante Controller how that looks next, and then I'll show you how to run this in redundant mode. Cool, so let me show you what quick config is actually doing. So as I stated on the console, there's not a Dante menu, and there's no way to patch any of the Dante channels on the console. So in quick config mode, it just does that for you automatically. Looking at my laptop, if I go into the card as a receiver, quick config mode already patched the first 16 inputs of the TO to the first 16 channels of the console. And in output, outputs 1 through 8 on the TO are patched to 33 through 38, which are the auxes by default 1 through 6, and then 57 and 58, which is the stereo bus. So if quick config is off, then you need to come into Dante Controller and manually patch all of those things yourself. Transmitter, that to the console. So again, like 1 through 16 here for the inputs. In quick config mode, none of this would exist, and you'd have to come in and patch that yourself. Also, we should discuss network settings really quickly. Everything right now is set to DHCP, and the network status in here, if I click on the object, I can see in network config that we are set to automatic. The next thing I'm going to talk to you guys about is running this in redundant mode. So as you can see in here, it's set to switch by default, and if I click it, redundant exists. But let me show you guys how to get to that point from the start. And if you point the camera, just to get into Dante Controller, how I have this set up is primary cable from primary on Dante set to this switch, primary from the TO set to the switch, and then control from my laptop sent to the same switch. Next, I'm going to show you guys how to set this system up for redundant mode, and that's not a really simple thing to do, so let me walk you through it. Really? Cool. So I showed you guys just the easy, quick config way to do it. Now let's get a little bit deeper dive into this whole system. So now we're going to set up the secondary port on the Dante card to run in secondary mode. And for the sake of everything I'm going to show you, every port on here is running DHCP. If you want to get into like static versus DHCP, like that's a conversation for another day. For the case of this, like everything is set to DHCP, including the port on my laptop. So let's take a look at the back and work our way to the front. So now I have the primary cable running to its own unique switch, and the secondary cable of this is going to run to another switch. If we walk around the front, you can see that here. So you need 2 switches to run a redundant system. All of the primary ports on your Dante devices need to go to its own switch. All of the secondary ports also need to go to their own switch. For laptop control, you can jump in to any one. And this one, I'm just jumping my laptop control out of the primary switch. Now, I also need to configure the Tio before I start turning things on. You guys come around to the back. I have not plugged this in yet. And actually, I should also unplug this so I can show you guys the networking side of this before you plug that in, because you can really bug it out. On the Tio, I'm gonna flip dip switch 4, and I'm just gonna keep the primary lines in right now, and we're gonna do some networking / Dante work in the computer. I also wanna make sure quick config is off right now. Now, something that's really important I want you guys to see, and that is the status lights on the Tio. This is kind of unique to the Tio. These lights will blink if nothing is patched in Dante controller. If you look up here, we see the devices. And let me record my laptop. Cool. Once again, we're in Dante controller, and I'm gonna look up my network status and select my devices, starting with the TF1, network config, and now I'm setting that to redundant. I also want to reboot. You're not rebooting the console, you're rebooting the Dante card. I want to go to the Tio. I want to, as you can see, these are red because we're currently not connected, and I need to go into switched, set that to redundant, yes. And I need to also reboot. As you can see, that warning's popped up there, that's there. What we're now gonna do, we're going to shut this off. I'm going to plug in my secondary line. I'm going to power the console off too. Give it a beat. And now we are going to turn all of our devices on. Cool. So, because quick config is still on, Dante settings error, please restart the console. So I'm going to shut the console. I'm going to go here. I'm going to slot setup, turn quick config off. Shut this console off. I'm going to go into the front, shut the Tio off, and set quick config off, because I'm running redundant mode. Now, this may mean I have to patch this all manually. And if you come around, you're still gonna see those same lights in the front, which is our red input-output warning lights. Those exist because you need to go into Dante controller and patch something, and if nothing is patched on here, it's not gonna assume anything is happening. There's no Dante streams flowing through it, so there's a problem. It's telling you need to go into Dante controller and fix that problem. The same thing with the console. If you look over here in the slot setup, it doesn't even see the Tio yet because nothing's patched. It's not recognizing it as a device. So if we go into Dante controller, I will patch something, and in this case, The Tio will be the transmitter, so the input's on the Tio, and the TF1 is going to be the receiver. So we're going to do that. And I'm going to patch input 1 on the Tio to input 1 on the TF1. Now, I want you guys to look right here. Now the lights are gone because we have patched something. So we have established a Dante connection. And if you look on the TF1, we can also see it is now seeing the Tio because we established a Dante connection. Now, unlike Quick Config, you don't see the automatic stuff that's patched in this menu, and that's because we still need to patch. Once again, same thing that we did before. Select the channel and select slot. And we're going to give it a test. Check, 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 check. Make sure that we have head amp control. So go back in there, slot setup. Head amp control right here is selected. So that means our gain knob should do what we want it to do. Check, 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 check. And we're right where we need to be. So that's about it. It's the networking settings start to really matter when you're trying to run it in redundant mode and do anything other than just 1 through 16 through 1 through 16. If you're new to this and you just need it up and running, just do the quick config mode. Make sure quick config is set on the console and Tio. Shut them both off. Turn it back on to get that digital handshake. If your status lights are on, that means that there's no Dante, nothing has been patched. Regardless if you could see them in Dante controller, there needs to be that virtual handshake. In quick config mode, it just makes that digital handshake for you. So I hope this video was informative. Reference this if you need any help getting your Tio set up to the TF1. Thanks again for watching.